Well, good day and hello to all. I am so excited that you decided to join us again on Thankful Tuesdays. We are on our fourth Thankful Tuesday, and I almost feel like I saved the best for last. Thank you to all of you that have been going on to like and share, and absolutely those that have been coming on to comment. It has been my pleasure and my joy to be able to share four amazing people with you, including the one that I'm going to share with you on tonight. Before I even bring him on, I just want to say that this dude's got it. And you know what that means. It just means they just got it. You can't explain or you can't quantify. You can't really describe when someone just has it. He's just got it. And I'm just so grateful that our paths have crossed. And so tonight we're going to dig into a couple different areas that I would love to just share and be able to pull some things out of him because he is a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of resource. But then also, he's just a wealth of a person. The dude is just, he's rich in being who he is. And that's what I love about him. So at this time, I want to bring on Mansour to join us today on Thankful Tuesdays. Hey, hey, hey.
How are you?
Oh, okay. Is that the smile you're supposed to give when you come on?
Yeah.
I love it. How are you, man? What's happening?
I'm great. Living life, loving it. Glad to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. Obviously I love and appreciate our relationship and how it's grown and evolved, and I'm really enjoying this next iteration of it. So I'm looking forward to spending some time with you here.
All right. Well, look, I am too. So, look, the way I like to start this is to tell people why I'm thankful for you, but then I like to just tell the person straight up. I mean, we're in different states. We're both always very busy, so we don't get to talk very often. But I did want to just take the opportunity to first say thank you. And the reason why I'm saying thank you to you is that you have been just a pillar in the short period of time that we've known each other. You are so, I want to say almost static. Like there's certain things about you that really just remain the same. I know exactly what I'm going to get when I get the opportunity to interact with you or to talk with you. And so I wanted to point out three major things that stood out to me when I thought about why am I so thankful for Mansour? And so one of them, I was thinking back to it was September the 12th, 2021. You don't remember this, but I do. And I called you because I was once again in a situation to where I had an opportunity that was being presented to me. And it was one of those opportunities that I was like, I don't think I have what it takes to do this. And you're like the best hype man, but you're also a truth teller too. And so I called you, and this was what you said to me. And I actually posted this on Instagram those 2 years ago. But you said to me, you were like, Natalie, the people that you're going against may have more experience than you do. They may on paper be more qualified than you are. You said, but if they decide to go with them, they're going to be taking a risk. But if they decide to go with you, they're going to be making an investment. And I was like, yo, like I'm an investment, dude. And so you said that to me, and that has stuck with me to where I've changed my whole career path since then. I've made probably 4 to 5 major life decisions since that conversation that you and I had. And so that was one thing that stood out the most, is that I left that conversation understanding that I'm an investment. I'm not a risk. I'm an investment when I show up. The second thing is whenever I was going through that National Development Finance class, my goodness. So, for those of you that don't know, I didn't know anything about development finance, but in my back pocket, I have the phone number to this guy. And I'm telling him, like, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm passing the test, but when I get to the final test, I'm having some issues with these formulas and this Excel spreadsheet. And I want to thank you because you were taking time on your Saturdays. You were taking time after work, 10 and 11 o'clock, willing to stay up with me and work through those formulas and show me not just how to do the formula, but what it really meant. Not a lot of people are going to do that. Not a lot of people are going to do that for free. And so that was the second thing. And then the other thing that I just am so thankful for is the first couple opportunities that we got to work together, and we were able to go into some public housing units and walk the different properties and different things. I love it because you could take your shoes off and put on some tennis shoes and walk with me. And you're talking to the residents, high fiving residents, meeting with residents as we're trying to help them find jobs and education opportunities. And you never change. And I know a lot of people with your status that don't do that. And you're willing to give people your phone number right there and say, hey, if you got a problem, call me anytime. And it's really your phone number. And so those are the three reasons that I wanted to start this conversation with, to say that I'm grateful to you. I thank you for being the man that you are. You've been such, even though I'm older than you have been such a person that I've been able to look up to and admire from afar. And so I'm going to start you out by wanting to know, who is someone in your life, whether past or present, that has been the person that has held the door open for you, and in what way?
Well, first, thank you very much for those kind of words. And I
Yeah.
do remember those conversations. They're always good ones. Um, an interesting question, and I would say that there are many people, some of which I'm probably going to miss, because at every
Mm,
different level, every different time, there's a different door, a different window. That not just opening a door, but there's some that some people that close a door for you,
yeah.
because you can't see that, you don't have the wisdom, you don't have the experience to know that, like, you shouldn't be going through that door in the first place, but you aren't there, right? It's kind of like
Mm,
the kid in the light socket, right? The parent, I can't explain to you how electricity works, but let me just
yeah.
tell you that you shouldn't put your finger in it, right? um so I think it goes back to, really, as a kid, my father passed away when I was very young, and my mom worked a lot. She did a lot. I mean, I think it goes without saying that mom is always there, right? The ultimate
Yeah.
opener, right? Like,
Mm,
always there. But there were a lot of guys that were in the neighborhood that, regardless of what they were doing, they always would look out, right?
mm.
And, like, even to the point of, like one day I was like 14 years old, had a ton of hair, right? I just took my braids out, right? Bush was huge. I'm going to play basketball, and I get pulled over by a police officer, right?
Mm.
Just, he screeches right in front of me as I'm trying to cross the street. And there's a woman in the back that was yelling, "That's him, that's him." And I'm like, what is this? Like, I'm going to play basketball. Like, I've been in the house all day. It's the summertime. Like, I wasn't outside at 95 degrees. Um, and I wanted to get locked up. And they were saying that I fit the description of someone that had assaulted this woman. And getting locked up, my mom came and got me, whatever. She's upset. She thought I did something. Like, "Ma, I didn't do anything. Like, I don't, like, the police wouldn't lie. Like, well, they might not have it right. They might not be lying, but they might not have it right."
Right.
So from that, when I got home, um, every like male, like the pillars in the community, came to the house, and they were like, "He didn't do it. We're gonna find out who did." Right? Because they knew,
Wow.
like, I was playing basketball, I was good in school, like, I was not doing anything wrong. And that included some of the drug dealers in the neighborhood.
Hmm.
They're like, "Yo, like, no, like, he not, he no, like, he not one of the ones." And the next day, like, it was cleared up, right? Like,
Wow.
the neighborhood, like, fathers and, big brothers were like, "Listen, like, this ain't gonna go down like this," right? Like whoever did it, like, however you did it, I don't care how you gonna do it, but you need to clear his name, right? And it got done, right? So, I mean, just something as small as that. Whereas, though, that might not have happened. I might have got processed. I might have gone through the system. It might have been some other path that I might have taken just because of mistaken identity. That, regardless of what I said, like, no one was going to believe me, not even my own mom at the
Yeah.
time, because it was something that she just had not experienced before, right? Um,
Absolutely.
that all of a sudden, like, that door is open, right? And it leads you down something else. Um, I've there's a number of instances like that where, they're like, "Listen, like, this is what this kind of is." Um, in school, I think I told you my college career is interesting, but nonetheless,
Yeah.
when I was going to community college after I came back from University of North Carolina, Greensboro, I was flat broke. I had nothing, but I was in a statistics class and I needed a TI-83 calculator. I went down to the school store. That thing was $90. Like, yeah.
Right.
And it was a random brother that was in there. It was an older brother, and he bumped into me. We started talking, and he was like, "Man, like, what are you in for?" Like, man, I'm trying to find a calculator, but I think I'm gonna wind up having to go on eBay, see if I can find one for cheap. Cause this can't work out. Like, nah, man, you with me? He bought me um, that $100 calculator, and the reason behind it was like, man, listen, like, this tool is gonna get you to places that um I probably won't be able to go to because I don't have the youth that you have. He's probably in his like
Mm.
50s, right? Going back to school, right?
Yeah.
He was like, this right here is it's a small investment, right? And you being able to invest in others. Like, and I kept that with me. I kept that
Hmm.
with me for, like, okay. Like, he obviously he wants to do better in life, right? That's the reason he's going to school. But obviously he was doing well. And he was willing to take the time to get to know me in this brief amount of time, trust his spirit and the energy, and be able to say, you know what, I think this young brother can go somewhere. And this little $90 is a big deal, to him, but it's not a big deal to me.
Yeah.
That would get him somewhere, right? Um,
That's
there's
good.
a lot of those types of things that have happened,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, along
Yeah.
along the route where you want to do your best in order to make sure that you are being respectful to all of them, even though some of the micro kind of like it might not be a full blown door open, it might just be cracked a little bit, but it's
Right.
that progress that you needed to slide your way on past in order for you to be able to do what you want to do. So I mean, I
Love
think
that.
for folks like that, but those are some big examples like early on that
Yeah.
really, really kind of like critical. You know what I mean?
I'm really glad that you shared that, and I don't know who that brother was that got you that $90 calculator, but let me tell you something. It was definitely a good investment. I can already tell, even by you just sharing that tidbit, that you have become that for so many people to where you're like, oh, that's nothing. And one of the statements you just made, with that, you said he was like, oh, come on, you with me. You do that. I don't know if you realize that, but you said that to me before where we've been somewhere and I've been like, I don't think I need to like go, come on, you with me. And I'm like, okay. And so leading to this point, like you gave some examples that happened when you were 14 and when you were in community college to now being the senior vice president of development in one of the largest not for profit organizations when it comes to real estate. And I'm like, I'm still proud. Like, I remember when me and Terrell found out about it, and I think you were actually coming to Daytona Beach a couple months or a couple weeks after you had gotten promoted. I
Yeah.
couldn't wait to see your face because I was like, I can't wait to see this brother. So I want to know, like, what over the years has kept you interested and engaged in this field of development?
Great question. So the first, I mean, let me see if I can word this properly. And I'm gonna go to college a little bit, right? So let's talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs real quick, right?
Oh, okay.
Pyramid,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I understood very early on that in order to be competitive, at least at that time, you need to have a college education.
Mm.
At least for me, right? I mean, there's other folks that are like, listen, school is not for me. There's other ways to be able to make money, and I
Mhm.
100% agree with them. Despite my educational accomplishments, I agree that it is not for everybody, and that you should follow the path that's best for you. But nonetheless, I mean, it's a plug and play kind of deal, right? Show up,
Mhm.
pick what you want to do, stick to it, get a degree. 9 times out of 10, you're going to make more money with it than you will without it, right?
Mhm.
However, at that point, there's also this growing and even probably more burgeoning level of folks that have graduate degrees. So in this instance, as I'm starting to think about this, I had a business degree. I went to school for entrepreneurship, and like, all right, well, what business am I going to run? What business am I going to have? Like I'm not going to make widgets and nothing like that. So what is
Right.
it? And at the time, I I was starting to have a sensitivity to real estate because of some friends, and I wound up taking an elective at University of Baltimore, which is where I got my bachelor's from. And that elective was in commercial real estate development. It was like a one-on-one class. Loved it, did well. It just so happened that the teacher was a fellow at Johns Hopkins, which has a graduate real estate school. And one of the things that he and I talked about was just the flexibility of real estate, right? And like everything has real estate attached to it, right? Everything, whether it be 7-Eleven and Wawa, all the way up to hedge funds and
Mhm.
family offices, right? Real estate has everything, right? Leasing, sales, construction, like there's always some slant to it. But the key for me was you have the ability to get a job or make one.
Hmm.
Like the choice is yours, right? So that stuck with me, and from there I said, all right, well let me see if I can figure this out. And I had really the choice between Hopkins and University of Maryland. Um, Similar programs, albeit Hopkins had a much more specific slant going towards finance, and Maryland was much more general. But Maryland, it checked the boxes. Like number one, like I had a mortgage, so I was a working adult. Like they offered classes that were flexible for my schedule. The price made sense. And oh, by the way, the globalness of it allowed me, just as the type of person that I am, to as far as learning is concerned, like it allowed me to see the bigger picture to be able to get it faster. And I said, all right, well, it doesn't need to have a finance slant because I can always go get certifications and shore that up, which I did
Yeah.
eventually. But to your point, as far as like being able to do that, like now all of a sudden I have, as soon as I started going to school at Maryland, like just being in the school automatically made me like the person to go to talk about real estate.
Hmm.
And like it's something that so many people see as an opportunity. Some people see it as a risk. Like I've gotten phone calls from friends and family members that are like, hey, there's some issues with my family's estate that I really don't understand. Are you to help me through it? Or I just so happen to run into some money and I want to put it to work for me. And the thing that I'd like to do is I like to be able to touch and feel what it is I'm buying. So stocks and bonds really isn't me. And I want to think real estate. How can you help? From that, with that being said, like I started to see very early on that the community has given me so much, and now the
Hmm.
community, like without asking, it is saying like I need you to give back to me, right? And
Man.
by way of knowledge, right? So in that, and I say this all the time, like I'll give whatever information I got, you got it, right? I mean, I'm
Hmm.
not hoarding anything. Love is free. So shit information. So in that, I talk to people, I give them my time, best I can, and I hope that the information that I give them, pushes them forward. And then from that, just the opportunity at NHP gives me the ability to start like shaping neighborhoods in a
Hmm.
positive manner, but doing it in a manner that at least allows me the ability to engage and include the community as much as I can, right?
Yeah.
So, I've done projects in a number of different states. And within the last couple of years, I've started being able to do them in my hometown of Baltimore, which Baltimore has suffered from a number of different things, whether it be, riots, whether it
Yes.
be, very well documented police brutality and corruption, et cetera. In a lot of the neighborhoods where the police brutality and corruption occurs, where the disinvestment occurs, it occurs in neighborhoods where most of the people look
Hmm.
like you and I. So it gives me this ability to be able to bring a specialized skill set, bring a
Hmm.
specialized lens of how to look at things in a manner that can be an asset, right? Help to improve, help revitalize, and do so in a manner where I'm able to talk to the community about what it is they want to see. Let me tell you what it is I think I can do.
Hmm.
And if I can do it, I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna tell you I'm gonna do it. If I can't do it, I can at least tell you why. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes me telling you why, you may say, you know what, I think we can fix that. If you're willing to do it and we can fix it, will you do it? right? So
Mhm.
those types of like real conversations start to happen, and you're able to bring something to the community that the community actually is proud of, right? Because it wasn't done to them, it was done with them. So that
Yeah.
that opportunity, the opportunity I have with NHP allows me the flexibility to be able to do that. And that's something that NHP, champions. I mean, all of the developers, we strive to have that level of engagement. I think I probably take it a step further just because, I mean,
Mhm.
I'm from Baltimore, right? I mean, there's
Right.
projects that, I remember, being at that bus stop, and all of a sudden I'm putting a $50 million building there. I mean,
Dude.
you know what I mean? It's just different where you like, all right, like, wow, like I remember having to sit on this bus stop, freezing cold,
Yeah.
use the bathroom, like, oh well, maybe this is an opportunity for me to put some retail here, so you know folks can have that flexibility, right? You know what I mean? So it's those that ability that it's given me to not just help people by spreading whatever knowledge and giving what I got, but
Yeah.
also be able to shape the landscape. And like, you know what? This was messed up. I can change it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna change it. Boom, done.
Right. Mansour, I've got to jump in here because there's some stuff that you've said, like love is free, so information should be free. I love what you said about the community is actually the one speaking out. Like the community doesn't even have to say anything. You could drive around it, and it's showing you what it needs. And then I love how you just said there's two key things. If you can do it, then you'll say you can do it, and you do it. And then if you cannot do it, you're willing to tell the people the reasons why. There's a lot of what you're saying right here, and you said that you have a very specialized kind of feel and niche with different things that you've done. But dude, you're a specialized person, like all around. I like to call you the Renaissance man. I don't think that there's anything that you cannot do because you're so relatable and because you open yourself up. And I don't think you realize, I'm going to tell you, thank you again for this. I don't think you realize how powerful. So I want to sit in this for a second, how powerful of a statement it is to be able to say, the bus stop that I sat at, freezing cold, in this neighborhood, in this blighted area, is the same area that I'm now able to play a role in putting a $50 million building. I don't even want you to say nothing. I want you to pause right there and just let that kind of simmer because number one, it's huge. I know that right now you're working in 6 different states in the United States with some different projects, and on top of that, in your short period of time, you've been a part of $500 million worth of development. I just need you to just sit in that right there because you're not one to toot your own horn. I don't expect you to. That's not even in your nature, but it's okay to let me do it because this is my way of telling you, like, dude, people that don't even know you yet, man, we're proud of you, and want you to continue to do and to be who you are. So I want to dig a little deeper in some of the stuff you're talking about because I know your heart is about people. So this is one thing I remember honestly reading about. I got to read about my friend in this big thing, but reading about there was a particular development that you were doing, and the residents were really, really like stuck on, we have to have deep freezers, or we call them deep freezers, but freezers in our units. And it was a big fight. And I know because I've been on that side of like the, public housing, Section 8 housing, all of that, to where you don't normally put a deep freezer in there for so many different reasons. But this community was like fighting, like, we need this. And there was a certain reason why. What happened in that particular development that someone having a deep freezer to put their food became so important?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Park Chester Apartments in Southeast DC.
Okay.
Um, I I, all of the I've done a ton of work in the district. Love the district, and the district is like a second home to me, if you will. I've done a lot of my developments there have been in concert with tenant associations because the DC is very unique. Certain cities are starting to catch on, but DC has a what's called a TOPA law, which is Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. And it was enacted a long time ago when DC was starting to be very attractive to law firms and accounting firms, and you were seeing that a lot of the apartment buildings were disappearing and they were turning into these professional buildings, turning to office. So the law was enacted in order for tenants to now have an opportunity to purchase their building to save it. Albeit in many instances, the tenants didn't have the money. So instead, what the law does is it gives the flexibility for them to partner with a developer in order for them to work with that developer to buy the building and then be able to save it. And through that process, that means that they are going to pick who they want their landlord to be, and they're going to have certain stipulations that they want to mandate, right? In DC, which is like one of the highest rent areas in the country, they want to make sure that the rent is reasonable. They want to make sure that someone's doing the repairs. They want to make sure that there's some level of security measures that are included. All stuff that's basic, right? So, I've been able to work with a ton of tenant associations, and this one in particular, the original intent was for us to be able to do a complete redevelopment, meaning, all new kitchens, bathrooms, heating and air conditioning, new roof, like the whole gambit, right? And one of the things that I noticed, because at NHP, whenever we have an occupied building, right, this one was operating, it was built in like the 60s. We have to walk every unit and assess the conditions, right? We normally we want to take everything out, but I still need to see, like, what are the conditions? Is there some unique architectural something that I need to be paying attention to? Is there something that I need to account for that is maybe above and beyond what my engineers are saying? And one of the things that was above and beyond was, this deep freezer issue. So, I mean, as I'm walking through them, like everybody had them, in their kitchen, and some of them were smaller, some of them were like big, huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you could fit a couple of turkeys,
Right, and a body.
Yeah, and one of the things that the engineers told me very early on was like, listen, the electrical load for the individual buildings can't sustain this. And some of the residents are experiencing power outages largely because it's tripping the breakers. So in this instance, I had an issue, and it was already in the lease where it said, this is a lease violation. You can't have them, period. But people had them. So we had our, regular tenant meetings where I would come and we would give folks updates, and I will allow them to just, bang on me about questions. Again, if I know it, I'm gonna tell it. If I don't, then I'll tell you why I don't, and I'll get back to you with an answer. Here's my card, call me, that's my cell phone, text me, whatever, right? And one of the things that came up was, I'm like, listen, like management is having to enforce the lease, and enforcing the lease means that these deep freezers got to go. And I mean, it was an uproar. It was upset. Like the last thing you want is like a church basement full of upset residents,
Amen.
right?
Amen.
Like they was mad. And
Right.
like, all right, well, tell me more. Like obviously there's something I'm missing, right? And I want to be sensitive to this. So and they were very, very clear with the fact that, there was no grocery store, within walking distance. And, out of, 90 some odd units, maybe 10 people had a car. Right.
Yeah.
Public transportation was what they would use, and they were fortunately they were next to a metro, so they could take the subway. But they would still have to go a far distance, even on the subway, in order for them to get to a grocery store. Like, it was crazy. So for them, like when they go to the grocery store, they shop, right?
Absolutely.
I would get everything I need, in one shot as much as I can, and I need to be able to store it. Like the last thing I want is to have my stuff go bad. In the freezer that you have is not big enough. So, I took that into consideration real heavy. Like, what, we got to find another way. So I started just banging on my engineers, like, listen, what can we do in order to fix this? Like, I'm not going to just take this away, knowing that this is a valued resource. Like, I can't bring a grocery store here because I'm not building a grocery store. I'm not building a retail space. But I needed to be able to do something in order to try and minimize this effect. So the engineers, they said, well, listen, if all of the residents were to have an Energy Star deep freezer that was of a certain size, then the electrical load would be perfectly fine. So, all right, well, good. All right. So at this point now, like, all right, now I got the answer, but the answer is not just telling them to get rid of the old one and buy a new one, because I'm dealing with folks that probably didn't have the money to just buy a new one. So I said, you know what?
Absolutely.
What I'll do is I'll buy your deep freezer from you, right?
Hmm.
I'll buy it, and I found out like how much one of the compliant ones were. I'm like, well, I'll buy it from you for this amount. So basically, you sell this to me, and then I'll, go ahead and give you the money for you to go buy a new one.
Yeah.
And that wound up being the thing that did it. They're like, all right, well,
Hmm.
that makes sense. I said, listen, I'll haul away the old one. I'll do all of the stuff necessary, right? You just got to go buy your new one and have whoever you buy from, Best Buy, whatever, have them come bring it in. You good. So we had tons of these things that we bought. And if I'm not mistaken, let me go back in my notes. If I'm not mistaken, we wound up giving a fair amount of the good ones, because some folks had some good ones. I mean,
Hmm.
it wasn't new, but it was a tank. We want to say we wound up giving some of them to like some food pantries that used them because they were storing food, right? And they had these perishable goods. And they're like, man, you got a whole bunch of deep freezers. A lot of these are good, man. If I just plug these joints up, like that'll help me out with storage too. Like, all right,
Yeah.
right
And
on. Like,
so, yeah, this is the stuff that I like to talk about, because it's not as simple as going in and making it look pretty. And I think that's what I admire about you, because there are a lot of people, there are a lot of organizations that literally they sell this dream of what it's going to look like, what it's going to be. Here's the blueprint. And then we get people's hopes up, and at the end of the day, that's not what's delivered. And I'm excited because I know somebody that makes sure that not only is the quality of what's happening as far as the construction part of it is solid, the electrical part is solid, but then you go all the way down to the thing that's like, okay, we got to get these people this deep freeze, because it goes back to the needs that you talked about. Like, if I don't have the food to eat, I already don't have the transportation. And then, especially in places like what you're talking about, when the weather's bad, you're definitely not going to be able to go out and walk and get anything. So it's about fulfilling these needs. And I do want to say, when you said the word new, everybody on here knew that you were from Baltimore.
oh yeah,
It
oh
was
yeah,
strong.
oh yeah.
It was strong. So let me ask you this, because all of this is so important, and I want to thank you also for inviting me to be a part of your board for Love Regardless Inc. I think your organization is, I mean, it's going to blow up, and I'm really excited about it. Thank you for letting me be a part. Thank you for letting me be the treasurer. I feel like I'm like, dude, I'm probably the wrong person, but I think you were proud of me because I did pretty good on the development finance class. So you said I'll let her be the treasurer. But with that, I want to ask the question, for those of you that are listening. Mansour is the founder and, of course, the president of Love Regardless. And I want you to tell a little bit about what that is and where and why this was birthed in you.
Yeah. Great question. So the first, I mean, there's two parts of it, right? There's the motivation. I think the thing that kind of like pushes it over the edge, right? So the first thing is I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, right?
Mm.
Again, I went to school for entrepreneurship, so I always wanted to have the flexibility to be able to do more on my own. Personally, I don't believe Social Security is going to be around for me to use it when I get old enough to be able to get it. So
Yeah.
I got to make sure that whatever I'm doing now is going to be enough to be able to handle my lifestyle at that time. And again, this is not me being hypocritical. Like, my wife works for the Social Security Administration. I
Right.
tell her all the time, like, man, I don't know what y'all going to do for me, but you know what I mean.
Right.
So with that being said, NHP has very specific criteria of the transactions that it goes after, and there's a certain realm of properties that it doesn't, just because it doesn't meet those parameters, right? A certain size generates a certain amount of fee, which allows us to pay for our overhead. And I think that's simple math, right?
Yeah.
If you got a bigger company, you need bigger fees in order for you to pay those bigger bills. So from there, like, there's this opportunity for me to be able to utilize the knowledge, not compete with NHP, and be able to fulfill some of that entrepreneurial desire and some things that I've been blessed to have experience in. The next part of it is being able to do things that NHP probably wouldn't, just because of the boutique or uniqueness of it. And a lot of that came really, during the pandemic. So
Mhm.
during the pandemic, it was, I mean, I think it was rough for everybody, right? But my own personal little story behind it was, just before the pandemic, like my mom had got diagnosed with Parkinson's, and she got diagnosed with Parkinson's, but Parkinson's is relatively a slow moving degenerative disease. And she was living at a senior building, and it was like tough for her to find a senior building that was within her income bracket, right? She's
Yeah.
living off of SSI, and so like it was a very long time for her to be able to find something that made sense. She found it, but it took a long time. So the first thing is like, how can I increase this supply, understanding that there is a very, very large amount of the population that are about to be considered seniors, right? I mean, a lot of people call it the silver tsunami, and it's well documented about how many people over the next 5 to 10 years are going to be going into that retirement age, and we need to have
Yeah.
housing for them at varying levels. Um, the next part of it is, she wound up having a couple strokes, and then she just wasn't able to be independent. So in that instance, she had to go to something that was more assisted living. But even assisted living was broken down into two categories. It was either somebody's home, which they did the best they could in order to convert it, and then it was a medical facility that just felt big and sterile, right?
Mhm.
There wasn't anything in between. Whereas though something that was a little bit more homely and a little bit more warmer feeling, while still having some of the things that a larger facility would have, right? Large restrooms with large showers in order for someone to easily be able to be aided in using the bathroom, being washed and cleaned, right? Having some of the security measures, that are in
Yeah.
place in order to restrict access at certain times and stuff like that, but still have that homely feeling. So I'm like, all right, well, there's no middle here. Like, so we going around to different people's houses, and I'm like, yeah, this. I mean, the atmosphere seems cool, but she like, listen, I don't want to share no room with nobody that's this small. I ain't sharing no room with nobody.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
feel you. I ain't gonna do you like that. And then we go to the facility. She was like, I like this better than other places. It ain't the greatest, but at very minimum, if I gotta share a room, it's a big old room, and I don't gotta share a TV with nobody. She was like an NCIS like nut. She just loved NCIS.
My type of girl.
So thinking through like what that looks like, that allowed me to be able to say, like, you know what, like if and when an opportunity comes around, I need to be nimble enough to be able to react on it.
Yeah.
And I then went ahead and said, you know what, I work for a nonprofit. I understand nonprofit real estate development. So a nonprofit, has a number of benefits, many of which would help a small development firm because of the flexible financing, because of the grants and everything else. And oh, by the way, because George Floyd, died on the streets for our sins. I
Yeah.
mean, basically, the world is now at a point of atonement where they're saying, like, listen, we need to start sharing some of this wealth. Oh, and by the way, we need to
Mm.
give it to people that have been historically disenfranchised. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna ride that train, along with this proper vehicle of a nonprofit, to being able to get something off the ground that allows me to scratch two itches. The first is the entrepreneurial side. The second is being able to fill a void when other organizations don't have the capability to do so. So that's where Love Regardless kind of got started, and I mean it jumped almost immediately, right? I mean
Yeah.
the
Yep.
acquisition of the portfolio of 15 condominiums in Montgomery County, which is a suburb of DC, happened, which preserves affordable housing in an area that's not affordable, right?
Mhm.
And then most recently, I was able to get site control over a senior property
Yep.
at right here in Baltimore. It's probably like 10 minutes from my house, right? And the thinking behind that is that it's a substantial asset, right? It's 50 units. It used to be an old school, they got redeveloped, but It's in the hood. Let's keep it real. It's in the hood.
Yeah, yeah.
But within that, I'm wondering, is there an opportunity? And I want to have discussions with the city and the state about this. Like, if I say, listen, I'm going to invest not just in this building, but I'm going to invest in this neighborhood, right? So I'm going to do whatever I can in order to just improve everything around me within an X block radius, 2 block, 4 block, whatever. So that means that I'm going to work to buy houses. I'm going to work to maybe get control of vacant lots. I'm gonna clean up the
Mm-hmm.
vacant lots and see if I can make them like small green areas for people. Like if I made it a mini dog park. Like if all of a sudden was able to use this asset here, improve the asset through a substantial renovation, keep it affordable, utilize some of the financial benefits from it to improve this immediate area, does this then all of a sudden become this mini oasis that hopefully people will start to follow, and with
Right.
more of an economic motivation start to improve the neighborhood along with me. So there's something about being able to say, you know what, I'm already invested in this neighborhood, so I'm just going to keep investing in it in order for it to have a return. It's not necessarily financial, but one that is more of a return on the a return to the people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I mean,
Yeah.
economically, it's not going to make a whole bunch of money, right?
Right.
But
Right.
from a people standpoint, again, being in some of those neighborhoods as a kid, like, I remember catching the bus going through there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like,
That.
all right, that same house that was vacant and boarded up when I was like
Mhm.
17, that joint worse now. Like, all right, you like, you know what? All right, man, let's just go ahead and fix it. Like, who do I? Let me call some people. I'm gonna submit this application. I'm gonna go ahead and call in a couple of engineers, and we're gonna boom, done. And then it just
Yeah.
rock from that. Just rock from there.
I love regardless. I love the vision of it. I love the mission of it. I will say this. Look, when you bring to the board about the dog part, that one I might vote against you because I'm definitely afraid of dogs. But I'm just putting that on the record. But I'm
Yeah,
sure you
no
can
doubt.
talk me. I'm sure you can talk me into it. There's something. I always say there's a red thread. There's a red thread. Everything that you bring up, whether we're talking about your youth, whether we're talking about your education, whether we're talking about your role as a developer, all of these different things. There's this thread of this love is free, resources are free. You're always open to give. And then you keep bringing up kind of that bus stop or when you used to ride your bike. So I appreciate you having those bikes in the background because I know you're big on that and fixing bikes and stuff like that. So I don't know if you were on your bike or if you were on a bus, but there used to be um, what's called I'm trying to remember the name of it, the Joseph Ritchie Hospice
Yep.
Center. That, in your, I would say, high teenage years, 19 or so, you started to volunteer there, and there was some special reasons why. But you had told me the story one time about just riding through there, and you're like, I'm going to go in there and see what they do and see if I can help. I feel like, again, Mansour, that's just God has purposed you to be that. Like, you know how to get somewhere and just kind of feel your way through, like, yeah, I think I could do something here. And so tell me a little bit about that center and why you volunteered there, because there's some things that you did even then that I still see in you now as an adult, as a man, as a father, as a husband, that I feel like those attributes just keep getting louder and louder. And I feel like that volunteer opportunity triggered some of that. And what was that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Like there's always a voice that I think all of us have. The question is who listens, right?
Mm,
And are you at least being willing to be quiet enough to hear it, and willing to be um, as confident in yourself to listen to what it's saying, to at least try to do what it's saying, right? So in this instance, like Joseph Ritchie just so happened to be on my route going to University of Baltimore. I wasn't on the bike, wasn't on the bus. I was in my '98 Continental. Um,
Excuse me. All these
so
vehicles. So
oh
that's even
no,
better.
that was the hoop ride right there. That joint seats was broke, but at least they was leaned back. So
Yeah, there's laid back. I love it. That's even better because you're progressing. You went from the bike to the bus to the 98 Continental. I
oh yeah,
love it. Come on.
in driving past there, um, it was just something. It was an energy about the place, right? Like, man, what is? First off, it just said Joseph Ritchie. It didn't say anything about it being a hospice.
Mm.
So, I was like, man, let me look this up because I'm driving past this every, couple of days, and I'm just inquisitive about what it is. Almost like it called to me, and I read about it being a hospice and the history of it. It was one of the first hospices in Baltimore that would accept folks that had HIV and AIDS.
Mhm.
So, from that, it had this reputation of really being an advocate in the community. So for me personally, like my father, like I told you, he had passed away very, very early. He had AIDS, right? And he got AIDS from intravenous drug use. And he passed, like AIDS beat him up, and then diabetes took him out, right? That was the thing that killed him, right? And from it, there was this kind of connection to my dad, and then some of the work that Joseph Ritchie was doing. And then right in between this, and I don't know if I told you about this, I thought about it after we talked. There is a 30 for 30 that's out there, which is a very, very good one. And it talks about a race car driver that was like one of the best. Like he was on track to be one of the best race car drivers ever. Like um he raced against some of the greats, and some of the greats were like this kid is he's gonna be it, right? But this story is he partied a lot, and he wound up contracting AIDS,
Mm.
and it showed his kind of degradation because of the disease, right? And it's a very, very touching story. I thought the directors and the producers and the creators did a phenomenal job on that 30 for 30. But what it did is at a time where, as a young man, I am continuing to mature, and I'm asking myself certain questions that are very difficult to answer. I landed on a question of like where would I be if my dad had have been a larger part of my life, which he wasn't, because he part of my life he was locked up. The other part, he was in his room checking his blood sugar to see
Yeah.
where he was, and then after that he was gone. But from that, I was asking these questions, and a piece of me started to get frustrated. Like, yo, this guy kind of like left me out high and
No
dry. Like,
answers.
where you at? You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
And it got to a point where um between prayers and meditation and just like paying attention to what was around me, like the world was telling me like, yo, like you should not be mad at him. And if anything, like I started to feel bad for him
Mm.
because he didn't have the opportunities that I had, right? Like he wasn't driving to college. Like he had gotten
Right.
incarcerated. I've never been incarcerated. I mean, the whole thing with with me being 14 was mistaken identity. I didn't get charged with anything. Um, I owned my own home by myself. Like I didn't need anybody to be able to do that. My mom was living with me, not the other way around. So I was able to provide support for her.
Yeah.
I had a job. I was preparing to go to graduate school. Like all these things, all these blessings, right? That he wasn't able to take advantage of. And it was, me just being a competitive person. It's in my nature. I'm like, man, I've lapped him already.
Hmm.
Like, why am I like beating down on somebody that's not they didn't achieve some of the things that I've achieved? Like it makes no sense. Like why am I doing this?
Mm.
And from that I had to take a step back, and I was like, man, let me sit in his shoes for a little bit. And
That's
Joseph Ritchie
good.
called, and I went to Joseph Ritchie, and I was like, I don't know why I'm supposed to be here, but I like to volunteer and spend some time here. And Joseph Ritchie at the time it was independently owned. It's since been sold to a larger hospice, and I haven't been there in a little while. But at the time, it was independently owned, and they were really flexible. They were like, "Listen, come when you want. Let's go through the background check. We can go through some other trainings just to make sure you kind of understand the process of grief, and how to use some different techniques." And then they let me go, and then so I would just go there, right? I would just show up. I might show up for like an hour. I might show up for 15 minutes, even if that
Yeah.
15 minutes is just like sitting on the porch with one of the guys or the gals that I would typically go see, just to say hi, right? Just say like, hey, like
Mhm.
I'm in the neighborhood. I was thinking about you. I wanted to stop by, see how you doing, right? Um, what playing games, playing Uno, playing get my
Right.
feet in chess, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But having some of those conversations with them and being able to hear, like their story. Like some of the stories were, they included some regrets and some things that they wish they would do differently, of which like the the wise person learns from the mistakes of others, or what people would deem as a mistake, right? So I'm listening to these things intently. Um, and then being able to see that, like, regardless of where they are at the end of their life, like they still are who they are, right? Like, if main man, like, listen, like I eat vanilla ice cream every day for dessert. I want my vanilla ice cream. I don't care
Right.
what you got to say about none of this deaf stuff. Bring me my ice cream, right?
Yeah.
And then some of the conversations that go into like the beauty and the joy that occurred in life, right? Talking about kids and
Mm.
talking about some of the accomplishments that a person has gone through, and what that accomplishment meant to them and their family, and what I mean. So all these different things. So like Joseph Ritchie, all of a sudden, it kind of put me in a position to be even more thankful for life and where I was, and like by really through some of the work I had to do, and being able to understand my relationship to my father, meaning me to him, not necessarily the reverse, and how I now view it. It started to have a different perspective, and that perspective allowed me to have a better view of like what's important. And like albeit like money is something that everybody needs, but in all actuality, it's like if you kind of put your heart first, you put love first, like you'll be taken care of. Ain't nobody saying that you're gonna
Yeah.
be right here driving in like brand new, what I mean, electric, BMW or whatever. But like whatever your needs are, like they'll be taken care of. Like you'll be fine. Like if you don't like don't worry about it. Like you'll be good, right? But you need to truly believe that.
Yeah.
And if you truly believe that, and you do your best in order for you to make the most of the time that you have here, right? Try and leave this world better than what you found it. I think you'll find that it'll be much more fun. It'll be much more enjoyable. You will then understand that you are a resource, right? And it's your job to be a resource for your brother, for your sister, for the kids that are coming up. It's your job to be that resource and be able to show them, and be um, a ear to bend, someone to give advice,
Mhm.
someone to open a door, someone to close a door, even though they might
Right.
not like it, right? Um, and be able to do it and say, like, listen, like I'm doing this because I care. Like I'm not asking for nothing in return.
Right.
And those types of things, like those epiphanies, those um conclusions really came from some of the discussions that I had at Joseph Ritchie with folks that were dying. And it would be days where I would go and see my guy. Like we would go in there, we talk, we watch a little bit of the game and all that, and then like 2 days later I come back and he passed away.
He's gone. Man, thank you for sharing that, because there's something so humanizing to being able to spend time with people that is their last spot or their stopping point, so to speak. Because like you said, for a lot of them, especially with it being a hospice, they were kind of at the end. So there was probably a major level of transparency and purity that came from them that we don't get from people on the daily, because many of us think, we've got all this time. The other thing I want to put a plug out here for you. Every time you finish a sentence, I want you to start saying love regardless, because it's almost like every answer that you give that I asked you, it you have the perfect name for your organization, because that's it. Regardless, it needs to be love. So
Mm.
I know we don't have much time, but I want to ask you. I'm trying to think if I want to ask one or two more, but I do want to ask this. You just give me something brief. One of the things that I know about you is one of the ways that you have kind of, I almost want to say, become who you are and who you're becoming, how you've evolved, is there's been some times in your life that you personally put handicaps on yourself.
Yep.
Like, that's what I'm gonna call it now. So what have been, just give me one, what's been one personal handicap that you've put on yourself that has set you up to be who you are today, and be the man that you are today? Because many of us, don't know what that means. We don't know what that looks like. And none of us are really wanting to put a handicap on ourselves. So, quote unquote, what's been a personal handicap that you've put on yourself that has helped you evolve to be who you are today?
That's a good question. I put a fair amount of them. And some of them make you better from a skill perspective. Some of them make you better from a mental toughness perspective. I think one of
Mhm.
them is probably the bikes in the back. So the bikes that I have in the back, they serve a number of different purposes. Like obviously I ride them, but the vast majority of them are single speed. Like there's no gears to them. And in particular, that one is to, I guess, your right, my left, the one with the red
Mhm.
handlebars. That is a single speed road bike. Like it is painful to ride, right? Painful, pain. Like going up a hill with that thing is like it is weightlifting on wheels, right?
Right.
But from that, there's something about like it's you versus you, and
Mhm.
like this machine is a tool, right? So as you give, it will give. So there's a
Mhm.
piece of me of being able to kind of like go through the difficulty. And I ride with a group of guys, and there's some of them that have, they got gears on their bike. And one of the probably the most demoralizing things that they see is they see me flying past them, and I don't got no gears. Like I am the gear.
My gosh. You
Like I am.
preaching now. You
Yeah.
preaching. Come on.
So and it's not about trying to demoralize somebody and doing it, but it's about being able to say, what, it's me versus me. I'm a push, and then that, I mean, because all the guys I ride with, great guys, I would consider them
Yeah.
brothers, right? Like you'll talk a little trash to them, and all of a sudden it kicks them into gear. They're like, ain't no way I'm gonna let him fly past me, and he got this 1980s. You know what I
No
mean?
gears.
Yeah, no gigs. You got small shorts on. Like I'm not gonna allow this to happen today, right? So there's this kind of pushing to it, and even some of the road bikes. Like I've done 100 miles on these bikes before, and the kind of pushing yourself to deal with it. I mean, because there ultimately in life there comes a time where like you got the hand you dealt, right? It's not
Yep.
a bad hand, it's just a hand, right? And the question is how
Mm.
you going to deal with it. I've taken the approach of like embracing it, and if you embrace it, like it's just great. I was playing basketball last week, and I was missing everything, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna embrace missing. Like I love missing, right? And what it did is I started playing more defense. I started rebounding more. I
Right.
was handling the ball more, passing the ball. Like all of a sudden, my team just it like embracing missing meant that other things were able to flourish that were
Talk.
beneficial to the group. And like but I had to be okay with it, right?
Mm.
So like, you know what? I hope I miss everything, and I did. But we were out there. We were out there doing our thing. So the bikes is definitely one of them. In the past, when I went to the University of Baltimore, I did not buy books. It's not widely known that if you were in school, that the school that you were at, whether it be the business school, law school, medical, whatever, they are supposed to put the text on file at the library so everyone has the ability to access them.
Mhm.
Well, most folks don't know that. They buy books, and nowadays a lot of the stuff is digital. But if you have an old school professor that has a book, you can request that they put that book on file. So for me, I didn't buy books. That means I had to go to the library. I was in the library
Yep.
every day for hours because I had to have copious notes. I had to understand what the material was. And in order for me to go back to class, 2 days, 3 days, whenever that class was, and be able to recite what it is that I learned in order for me to pass the class. So all of a sudden, like I'm forcing myself to be able to truly have a mastery of the material as best I can.
Wow.
And it
Wow.
started to show up because now they're like, all right, yo ain't got no books and he up here answering questions. I got the whole book, but he able because he's read it, he's reciting the stuff while I got to flip through these pages to find my highlights.
Man.
And all of a sudden, like it started to yeah, I mean, a little, not necessarily competition, but people like, man, I'm this something got to change here. Like we,
Mm.
you know, so those types of things, just I've been able to perform, and if I put myself in those positions, I've come to find that as long as it's something that I care about, like I gotta have care about it. then
Yeah.
handicapping myself is normally the best way for me to be able to learn and be able to master something. Like you
Man.
will unless you have mastery of it, like why are you dedicating the time to it? So,
Man.
that's why when you and I were talking about the performers, it's like, all right, well,
Right.
three of it, right? Like let's, so
Yeah.
that's the thinking behind it.
Man, and I wish I would have known some of this before I went through that time with you, because I was like, man, he taking me all the way back to square one, and I just want the answer. You know what I mean? And that's,
Uh,
again, I was so grateful for that, because, like we said, when it was time to actually take the test, that's what's amazing is, remember, there was a glitch in the system because my test was online. There was a glitch in the system, and I was like, man, Sora, there's no way that I missed all these answers. So when I submitted, I quote unquote didn't pass the test. And then I submitted something to say there had to be something wrong, because I was so confident after spending that time with you. But it's that right there, because you even ingrained in me, allow that quote unquote personal handicap to be there. That way, you know how to handwrite
yeah,
every one of these formulas out. And sure enough, they ended up asking me to submit my, what is it, your notes, or submit what it is that you wrote down. And I ended up making an A in the class because I knew how to do it. So that's real good. Okay, I know we have to go, but I want to end here because I think this is crazy. I'm so excited that you're a part of this. So I don't know if it's been a year yet or if this just happened over the last couple of months, but with you being in Baltimore, of course, the whole nation, we feel like we know the name Freddie Gray, and it's connected to Baltimore. You mentioned already earlier, in regards to finances and development of the situation with George Floyd. There's certain things that you've mentioned, and then you being where you are. But recently, you were brought on, as a part of the Police Accountability Board in Baltimore City. How did this happen, dude? I'm proud of you, man. It's like everything is just, I don't know how you have the time. I don't know how you have the energy. But tell me a little bit about how this happened, because this is major.
yeah. So the state of Maryland in the last legislative session went ahead and passed a law, whereas though all the municipalities needed to have some sort of police oversight board. Baltimore City created its through its Office of Civil Rights, Equity and Civil Rights.
Mm.
So the Police Accountability Review Board, what we do is we are able to receive and review complaints on all of the law enforcement agencies that are under the city's purview. So that includes not just Baltimore City Police, but also Baltimore City Schools Police, the Sheriff's Office.
Mm.
Some of the schools have police departments, like Johns Hopkins has one, University of Maryland has one. Um, so what we're able to do is we're able to receive complaints from them when there is police misconduct. We're able to review them, and then those cases go in front of an administrative charging committee, of which the board will elect for folks to represent us, and being able to recommend um, certain disciplines for officer misconduct. And the board then will put together a report at the end of the year that will provide recommendations for police reform. So let me give you an easy one. Body cameras. So whenever a camera is turned on by an officer, it takes probably about a minute or so, give or take,
Mm.
before the audio comes on. So one of the things that we were charged with was reviewing a police involved shooting of a young man who had a firearm, of which the video starts, and you can clearly see that there's some conversation going on between the young man and the
Man.
officer, and then the audio kicks on right when the officer is in pursuit of the young man, and it kind of goes from there. So with that being said, one of the recommendations that seems pretty common sense is when the video goes on, the audio should as well. Like
Right, right.
like what did that conversation what did that conversation look like? What did it sound like? Right? Was
Mm.
there a technique that maybe the officer could have used to be able to diffuse the situation that would have probably prevented it from being a chase that led to a shooting? Um, is there something that could have been done better? Like we don't know, but you're able to answer some of those questions in the event that you have more information, which come from the body camera. So it's things like that that
Mhm.
are, I believe, police reforms that allow for a better, not just better policing of our community, but a better relationship between the police and the community.
Yes.
'Cause, in all actuality, like folks, like I mean, I hear defunding the police and everything else. Like if somebody steal your stuff, you calling the cops.
I'm calling the cops, right?
Right. So like and to be frank with you, um, the police are, I mean, they are the community. Many times they live in the
Hmm.
municipality, and like they do care about it, right? Don't get me wrong, there's some bad actors, but that bad actors is not the bulk, right?
Hmm.
So, what can we do from a training, from a policy perspective? That's one whereby it gives the police the tools in order for them to be able to do their job effectively, and be able to do it equitably and fair in the communities. So this way everybody goes home, right? Like the police officer,
Yeah, say
that
that.
even if it's someone that's committing a crime, like it's a way for us to be able to at least
Hmm.
apprehend that person in a manner that allows us to be able to stop the crime or at very minimal, apprehend the criminal and then be able to give that person the resources in order for them to be rehabilitated, to come back out and hopefully
Hmm.
be able to utilize certain skills in order for them to improve their life so they won't have to turn to a life of crime. But all none of that can happen unless someone takes a critical look at it. So that's what the PAB is and what we've been doing. So it is work that is very personal to me. Like I told you about the whole story
Yes.
of me, it's one whereby in the city, me, my wife and I, we live in the city. My son goes
Hmm.
to schools, and the officers, I have officers that I play ball with that are friends, and they're good guys, right?
Right.
The question is about like policy, procedure, training, right? And if there's bad actors, what do we need to do in order for us to weed those bad actors
Right.
out? So
Man.
it's a different slant from my like
Oh,
multiple boards and everything else that I'm doing, but it's one that's very, very fulfilling, and I wouldn't necessarily call it enjoyable, but
right.
I will,
Feel
because
it.
of what it is, right? It's a tough topic, to
Mhm.
deal with. Like it's hard to see, police involved shootings, especially when like a lot of like, the officer is not that old, like they're kids, the
Yeah,
people that they're going after are kids, and like, you know,
man. Mansoor, I could go on and on, dude. I've got question after question, but I know that you got other stuff to do. I'm so thankful on this thankful Tuesday that you gave me this hour of your time. I did notice something. There's so many things, so many things, and I'll send those to you because my thoughts are all over. But you just said something about the police reform component, and you said everybody goes home. We know that's always been kind of like a slogan of you want an officer to be able to go home at the end of the day. That's what police officers are usually thinking about. That's what their family is thinking about. Even those in the military, you want them to come back home. But I want to tie this in and kind of close with this because everybody goes home. That is almost like another thread in what you bring to the table. Watch this. The Ritchie Center or the hospice that you were working at, these people were getting ready to quote unquote go home.
mhm.
When you talk about development and getting this freezer in these new units for people that may not have been able to step into something brand spanking new like this without running into a development organization firm or whoever that was providing this type of housing. You're giving them an opportunity where everybody goes home. We talk about police reform. We want to be able to go home. We want black men to be able to go home, but we also want police officers to be able to go home. You talked about love regardless and what you noticed with your mom during that time, during the pandemic. You simply wanted her to have a home to go home to that was something that she could be comfortable in. even you mentioning your dad, regardless of incarceration and all of that. And we know he came out and became a chef and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, from that incarceration, we wanted to see him go home. Dude, that is the most dynamic way to end this tonight. Is every area of your life, I believe, and it's almost about to make me cry because I'm proud of you, you're giving people an opportunity to go home. And I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for being an example to us of what can happen with one brother just making a decision that, you know what, I like this, I'm good at it, and I'm going to make sure that what I like and what I'm good at and what serves me well, that I'm going to use that to serve others well. So I bless you tonight. I don't know if there's anything you want to end with before I let you go, but I'm going to say thank you, Mansour. And like I said, and love regardless, man. Love regardless.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thanks for having me and being willing to listen to what I have to say. I think this platform that you are growing here is a special one and should be shared, right?
Mm,
Uh, there are a number of folks that don't understand what being thankful really is, right? And I
wow.
think that you are having that platform because sometimes, like I think I talked about this with school, sometimes you need a plug and play option, right? If someone can listen to this and watch this and be able to get the energy that you are sharing so beautifully, I mean, I think that will help change lives. So, thank you for allowing me to just really be a part of this. I mean, this is an awesome platform, and I know you're going to be doing very special things with your new career.
New. That's right. I'm gonna start saying it like you say it, man. I appreciate you. I know that I get the opportunity to see you again. I don't know if it's gonna be next Monday or the Monday afterward, but I know we have a board meeting
Yeah.
coming up. So I look forward to hearing about some special stuff that you got some LOIs out there for. So I'm ready to hear it. And hopefully I can vote for you and not against you.
All right.
All right, man. Have a wonderful night and thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All
Talk to you
right.
later.
Bye. Oh man, you guys, as you could tell, I could have went down any of those rabbit holes. I mean, literally, and there was so many things. And I want to encourage everybody, if you have a chance, go back and listen again, especially those parts that kind of stuck out to you, whether it was the development component, whether it was the volunteering component, whether it was Mansour sharing some of his purposeful decisions. That's one of the things that I think is so amazing about him. He does nothing that is not purposeful. Like it, I mean, or he would say that does not serve him well. He said to us when we first got on tonight, I was like, "How was your day?" And he's like, "My day is always great because I make sure that my gratefulness is always higher than my expectations." Man, if that's not a quote, hashtag that. So I wanted to share him tonight because I am extremely thankful for him, and I know that you can see why now. So we've got some other cool things coming up. Thank you so much for watching these Thankful Tuesdays over the last 4 Tuesdays, and I will see you again soon. God bless you.